Some plants don't want to be variegated. And I think we human beings need to realize that some of these plants that we are manufacturing, we are variegating, they don't want to be variegated, and they do every single thing they can to unvariegate themselves. I made a previous video telling you what plants love to be variegated, and you can comfortably spend your money on those plants because they just love the variegated lifestyle. Well, today I'm going to be exposing the plants that do not like to be variegated, and they're going to give you a hard time as a result. Okay, so grab your popcorn as usual, grab something, sit down, because this video might potentially save you a lot of money and heartbreak. Let's get to exposing. The first plant is a variegated fiddle leaf fig. I'm going to ask you a serious question, and I want you to answer me honestly. Have you ever seen a mature variegated fiddle leaf fig? Have you ever seen someone that personally owns a mature variegated fiddle leaf fig plant? So what made you think you were gonna be different? What made you think you were gonna be the chosen one that was gonna get this plant and grow it to a beautiful specimen? I remember when this plant hit the Nigerian market, all the Nigerian affluent girlies of society quickly grabbed onto it, and this is why sometimes it is good to be broke in life, because I wanted one but I couldn't afford it. The price was and still is extremely high, and every single one that got this plant, the plant is either dead or it is struggling or hasn't grown for them in months. Some of you already have a difficult time with the all green one, and you've branded her as notoriously finicky. So what made you think the variegated one was going to be any easier? What made you think? The issue people typically have with this plant is that the variegation tends to burn, or the plant just starts to drop leaves, or the plant just doesn't grow. Like, it just doesn't grow at all. And oftentimes it always ends in sorrow for a lot of people who have purchased this plant. So please, except you are extremely courageous, or except you have like money that you just feel like throwing in the air, I would strongly advise do not go for this plant. There are other ficuses that have stable variegation, like your variegated Tiniki, your variegated Ficus ruby, your variegated Ficus shivriana. If you want a variegated ficus, these are good options, but that variegated fiddle leaf fig tree, no. Speaking of ficuses, this is another ficus that doesn't want to be variegated. It's a Ficus triangularis, a variegated Ficus triangularis. And let me tell you, I have owned the green variants of this plant, the all green non-variegated variants of this plant, and it was stupendously easy. It grew like a weed. In fact, at one point I actually got bored of it and I just sold it. But you see the variegated one? Oh my goodness gracious, she is a drama queen. She is a notorious drama queen. Every single person that owns this plant will tell you to treat this plant like glass. You move it, it drops leaves. You report it, it drops leaves. You underwater it drops leaves. And I think that is just the plant responding to its variegation. It sees its variegated leaves, even though they are extremely beautiful, but it sees those variegated leaves as like parasitic, as a defect. So at the slightest inconvenience, it will just drop those leaves. It's like, no. Like I said, the non-variegated counterpart of this plant is so unproblematic. I never had any single issue with this one. It's not the prettiest, it's not the most photogenic, it certainly doesn't look as nice as its variegated counterpart, but it is extremely unproblematic. The variegated one, however, is a notorious diva. Every single person I know that has owned this plant is always going through gymnastics to actually keep this plant happy and alive. Now, this next one has a reputation, and I feel like if you're in 2025 and you're still counting on this plant to give you stable variegation without putting you through hell and back, then babes, you've been living in la la la. It's a pink princess. I remember when this plant hit the market like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Oh my god, it was such internet sensation. It was the rave. This was like my ultimate wish list plant. And honestly, you can't blame anyone because look at the variegation. Because when this plant decides to behave, it produces this beautiful variegation. Sometimes it even bring out all pink leaves. So needless to say, a lot of people got this plant and they quickly realized, oh my goodness gracious, there's nothing princess-like about this plant. It should be called Pink Devil. Pink Diva. The plant in itself is actually not difficult. It's as easy as your typical standard philodendron and actually grows fairly fast. The problem is in getting it to produce those beautiful pink variegation that we all love. Because the plant is hell-bent on not being variegated, and you can't really blame it because variegation actually isn't entirely beneficial for a plant. It might look beautiful and ornamental to us, but it's actually a defective trait in that plant. Because it doesn't contain chlorophyll, the green pigment that a lot of plants actually need to photosynthesize. So with your pink princess, she's like, I came to this world to survive. Okay, I'm gonna push out as much green leaves as I can. And then people go through different means just to ensure that this plant maintains its variegation. One popular hack is actually to chop the plant, to cut it, and this is something I've done very frequently. In fact, I just realized that I still have a pink princess. It's dumped somewhere in my garden out of frustration, bringing out a sickly looking small tiny variegated leaf. But that's basically what you're going to battle with when you get yourself this plant. You're going to be praying, chopping and praying that the variegation turns out being beautiful, not just on one leaf, but on the next leaf, but also on the following leaf. Like, you're going to be praying that the variegation is consistent as the plant grows, which is not how to live life. Babe, this is 2025. Why would you set yourself up for something difficult? Some people are actually really lucky and they get like a specimen that just behaves itself. It has chosen to be variegated and just gradually pushes out these yummy looking variegated leaves. But for the most part, that is not true for a lot of people who own this plant or have bought this plant before. However, there's a new variant out there. It's a Philodendron Pink Princess Marble, I think that's what it's called, that has more sparkle and distributed variegation, and the variegation is actually constant, allegedly. Because I feel like that is still a new introduction to the plant market. So in another 2 or 3 years, we'll start hearing the horror stories, if there are any. But apparently and allegedly, that one has more stable variegation. So if you're going to get a pink princess, please just get that one. If you can, it costs a bit more, but it will save you the heartbreak and it will save you the pain of your regular pink princess philodendron. This next one, when I see people buy this plant, especially when these are people that I know they don't exactly have the greenest thumb, I'm like, what were you expecting? Like, what were you expecting? Were you expecting that the plant was going to do well in your care? Because the non-variegated counterpart of this plant is difficult. It has a reputation in the plant community, is notoriously difficult. It's a variegated Alocasia Frydek. So, like, this one is the exception in this video because the variegation is actually stable and it produces beautiful variegation. Like, the variegation is, oh my goodness, it's chef's kiss. But this is a difficult plant. Alocasias are notoriously difficult, and your Alocasia Frydek is no exception. If the non-variegated one was a pain, were you expecting the variegated one to be a walk in the park? Every single person I know that's had this plant complains about the usual issues with Alocasias. Yes, it has beautiful variegation, but you're hardly going to get a plant that has more than 5 leaves at a time. At any slight inconvenience, the leaves will drop. Also, the problem I think a lot of people that own this plant encounter is that they are obsessed with collecting culms of this plant. And in a way, you can't blame them because obviously they want to make their money back. They want to propagate as much as they can. So they're obsessed with unpotting the plant and collecting culms. And one thing I've learned about Alocasias is that they don't like to be repotted or unpotted. They don't like you tampering with their roots. The moment you do, they just start to decline, or they may potentially go dormant. You could try your luck with this plant. I've seen some people grow really impressive specimens, but these people have such green thumbs. I'm talking the likes of Sydney Plant Guy. I think I've seen his and it's just amazing. Also, this lady plants by Melissa. Alocasia, she's like the Alocasia queen in my eye. Alocasias are like next level. She has an epic green thumb. So people in that level that have not just the green thumb, but also the time and energy to actually take care of this plant almost on the 247 level, I feel like those sort of people can tackle on this plant. But you, the average plant girly, no shade, but like, you're still building your green thumb. That is too much of a risk, an expensive risk. You to embark on. Maybe try the non-variegated one. Try and master taking care of the non-variegated one before you embark on taking care of this variegated one. It is a plant that will give you the stable variegation that we all like. Each leaf produce a healthy variegated leaf, but it is not an easy plant. It's not an easy plant, and you might end up regretting your decision of buying this plant. Yeah. This next one, I just feel like it's just a money grab. I don't feel like it's an actual plant with stable variegation. I feel like this is a plant that just has spot variegation and then someone tried to market it. It's a Monstera Aurea. Yeah. Not only are you getting a plant that basically looks like a mature golden pothos. If we're being real, it looks like it. So not only is this a plant that costs a lot, but looks like a cheap plant. Okay, but you're also getting a plant that has unstable variegation. Every single person I know that's bought this plant, the struggle is always real to maintain the Aurea variegation that it apparently is supposed to have. The plant always wants to just produce green leaves, or in the event that it does actually produce variegation, it's just a tiny strobe, a tiny streak, or just a glint. And as the plant matures, it just reverts back to being all green and non-variegated. I once actually owned this plant. I remember somebody gifted me one and it had like faint variegation. And at the end of the day, I gave up and sold the plant because it did not produce any more variegated leaves. And I was tired of having to chop, and cut and propagate. My idea of variegation or a plant that has stable variegation is a plant that just will always have, every leaf will have at least some level of variegation. Like you don't have to worry that, oh my God, it brought out a highly variegated leaf, but then the next leaf is green, and then the next leaf is slightly variegated, and the next one after it is green. That to me is not a plant that likes to be variegated. That's a plant that is in a constant struggle with itself. And the Monstera Aurea is one such plant. It's in a constant struggle to get rid of that Aurea, that spot variegation. Just use that money instead to invest in another type of variegated Monstera. There are so many different. I think there's a Monstera lemon lime, which is also similar to a Monstera Aurea. We've talked about this before. It costs an arm and a leg, but at least you're going to get something that has more stable variegation. So you might as well go for that. Skip this wannabe golden pothos, and yeah, don't get it. Okay, so darlings, we've come to the end of this video. I wanted to keep it short and cute so you guys will ruminate this information very well. But I'm really curious to know, did I miss any other plant? Is there any variegated plant that has honestly put you through the wire and you're like, I would never in my life even advise my enemies to buy this plant? If there is, please let me know in the comments. I'm honestly curious to know, and I'm gonna see you in the comments. We're gonna continue this conversation as usual in the comments. I'll see you there. Until then, see you in the next video, darlings. Bye.